the keynote speaker wants to use the podium.
Perfect. That sounds
Okay?
good. Okay.
Okay.
You don't have slides?
No,
right?
no, no,
Okay.
no, no, no. Just opening.
Um, then there is like a panel session. I see all
A
this.
panel.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
You have two mics that you can pass by?
yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay. I can start.
Yeah.
Okay, it's there. Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to today's session on the role of youth in capacity building on research and integration in the policy making arena in the global south. My name is Rula Majdalani. I am a climate advisor at ICARDA, which is the International Center on Agriculture Research in Drylands. And it is my pleasure to welcome you all. This is a session jointly organized by ICARDA and the Alliance. And this is a session where we would like to showcase the important role that the youth can play in addressing or in delivering on the Paris Agreement and the climate agenda, in raising ambition, in working towards climate justice. We've been hearing them all over the place, and not just this year, but so many years before, about the need to address climate justice, raise ambition, and push the agenda forward. I think that the youth can also play a very important role in the climate, on climate research. There is a lot of work, a lot of research work has been done, and the knowledge platform or the backlog of, there is a lot of knowledge on climate science and its cascading effect. But there is also still much more to be learned. And this is where, for this today's session, we will be hearing about, it's organized in two panels, and we will be hearing in the first part about where are the research gaps, how can we harness and interest, and where do the interests of young researchers lie in addressing these gaps. And in the second part, we will be hearing about the role that they can play in policy making. The session is, we will have as a start, and I would like to welcome here Dr. Harry Clark. He will be delivering a keynote address. Dr. Harry is a special representative of the Global Research Alliance and on agricultural greenhouse gases. And we will have then the two panels. And also let me highlight that this session will look at the Latin American case and the MENA region case, but the aim is to look at the global south. And what we would like to look into and to come out from this session is to build on a link with youth networks. There are many good youth networks who are interested in mentoring programs that CGIAR and many universities can offer. We would like to see also collaborative research, and we would like to see interdisciplinary research. And I think this is a good opportunity. We're not just talking about climate, but climate in its effect on water, on food, on energy, on social field, on the social arena, and on the interlinkages and the well-being and of course, the health issues. So without further ado, let me invite Dr. Harry to deliver his keynote address, please.
Thank you very much. We're running a little bit late, so my 7-minute presentation, I'll try and drop it down and ensure that we catch up a bit of time. Ooh, that doesn't seem to be where I should start. That's... Where am I meant to be pointing it? Can we start? There we go. No, can we go back where we were? I'm not touching anything. Can we start at the beginning, please? Right, thank you. Is this working? Right. Yeah, I'm Harry Clark. I'm the Special Representative of the Global Research Alliance. So you may ask, what's the Global Research Alliance? Well, not working. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask them to do. Am I pointing in the wrong place? Anyway, the Global Research Alliance is an alliance of 67 countries formed in 2010, whose aim is to foster collaboration across the globe on research into agricultural greenhouse gases and the effect of climate change on agriculture. And as part of that, we undertake a lot of activities in research collaboration and in capacity building. And no, I'm not. I'm clicking on these. There we are now. Let's try it again. So there's the Global Research Alliance. But we've said that. Let's move on if we can. And so when we're building international capacity, we're looking at a range of scholarship programs. We're looking at trying to build capacity in policy as well as in science. And we have a very big program around capacity building in inventory development for agriculture, quantification of greenhouse gases. And our premier sort of flagship project is the Cliff Grad Scheme, which is really about training PhD students. It's providing PhD students with the opportunity to spend 6 months of their life in another institute, away from where they're doing their PhD, and there's a very broad range of programs that we will fund for that. And this is now, sorry, we're skipping things all the time here. And I need to get the next slide. So if I can find where it is. No, we're skipping slides all the time. So I've got figures on the Cliff Grad Scheme. Sorry, it's skipping slides. This is disastrous. Can you leave it on that one, please? Just leave it there and I can move forward. So, yeah, the Cliff Grad Scheme is our premier scheme. 6-month training in other places. We also have a separate scheme which is aimed at youth in Africa, called the Reform Scheme, which is more masters and PhDs. And we also have this other training program which works in inventory, but there's then a focus on inventory development for younger people. I'm praying that this is going to work. No, it is not going to work, but never mind. That's what I wanted. So far, we've given 176 PhD students the opportunity to spend part of their PhD program in developed countries. And if you, sorry, down at the bottom behind the chairs, you can see it is focused on the Global South, and we can see across a very large number of countries that we've been able to have that initiative work right across the Global South. And I'm now going to say, hopefully, that we've got that. It will do. So this is our 6th round, and I'd really like to announce today that the 6th round has come to fruition. These are the results of our 6th round. We've just given another 44 scholarships, and they come with applicants from 19 separate countries, and they will be going into 29 separate institutes across 21 countries. And if you look at the mapping where we are, we are pretty well distributed, but we would like to make it more global, and And we will be having a 7th round. That will be in 2024. So can you go back to where we were, please? That one, thank you. So we've got the 7th round, which will be in 2024. And we really would like to spread that geographical locations. So we really would like to focus on the Middle East, North Africa, more from Latin America and Central America, and the Asian region. We would really like to encourage more women to apply. We have a very skewed applications, and we would really love to have more women apply. And you know, the reason why we don't have an equal balance of men and women is because we have this very skewed application. If there are reasons why, if there are things we can do to encourage that, we would love to hear from everyone. But so far, we would really love to do that. And on the previous slide, if you looked at there was a QR code, and you can actually look at that and see the details that people are doing within this capacity building. Because really what we're trying to do is build tomorrow's leaders, both in science and in policy. So that what we're doing here is what we hope is create the leaders. We want people to go back to the countries they come from and lead the science, be leaders in direction and strategy in those countries. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah. So it is time to acknowledge this scheme is made possible by the generosity of the New Zealand government and through the CGIAR, through its Mitigate Plus program. We would love to expand this program. So if anyone wants to dig deeper into their pockets and contribute alongside the CG system and alongside the New Zealand government, we would be very open to that. We always have more applicants than we can give awards to. So look out for the next round of awards, our 7th round, and really please spread the word that we would like more applications and we would like more funding contributors. So sorry about the glitches with the presentation, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Harry, and I would like to also especially thank you for wanting to expand and include the MENA region, the Middle East. I think there is a good and excellent pool of researchers who would like to expand in that area and also upscale their skills and engage at a global level and in comparative research. And I think you are opening the door with that. Let me now invite Professor Charles Spilani, who is the director of Ryan Institute from the University of Galloway in Ireland. And he will be leading the panel on the research needs, the research gaps, and research opportunities, and opportunities for capacity building for young researchers. Please, Dr. Charles, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Rula, and it's really wonderful to have this youth-focused event here today and have a great audience here with us. So what I'd like to do to start is to get our panelists up here seated, and we have one panelist I think that's coming online, Glory Edwards, and so if we could get Glory on the screen, that would be good. So we have Sebastian and Raha, and I'll introduce both Sebastian and Raha in a moment. Yeah. So meanwhile, there's Glory. Okay, so Glory's on the screen. So we have our panelists in place. So my name is Professor Charlie Spillane. I'm delighted to be here at this event because we have in our university have a focus on training and education of young people. We've been running a master's program on climate change, agriculture and food security in partnership with the CGIAR and others, where we've graduated about 200 students to date. We also work very closely with the CG and Mitigate Plus program and the Global Research Alliance on greenhouse gases, on the Cliff Grads program, so it's really wonderful to see the announcement. And indeed, as Harry has indicated, there is really a need for much more significant investment in capacity building in the Global South, both on the research but also on the policy side to ensure that the youth of the future become the leaders of the future, essentially. Before I introduce our panelists, I'd just like to mention that we should consider the frame of this session in the context of the UNFCCC Article 6, which is focused on capacity building and training and education. So, you know, we're all here because of the convention, and so it's really important to see the role that universities, research institutions, research organizations play in relation to that. The youth focus, there's a couple of points I'd like to kind of help to frame our discussion here. Youth focus is really important because it's important that we engage and enable youth to engage in research to generate knowledge for evidence-based climate mitigation and adaptation. There's also a strong climate justice component where we need to think about how youth can be better enabled to engage in intergenerational dialogue with the existing generations so that joint efforts about the future can be forged in relation to research and policy making. Similarly, on the climate justice front, we also need to think about diversity and inclusion, and Harry pointed to this challenge in relation to cliff grads. How do we ensure that marginalised youth that are disadvantaged have access to the table, essentially? So we'd like to hear from the audience and from the participants in relation to that. And then finally, in relation to impact pathways, to what extent youth are really woven into impact pathways for and what sense of ownership they have. So those points I'm just putting out to frame the discussion, but I'd like to introduce our panelists. We have Sebastian Pedraza. He's the steering committee chair for Young Professionals in Agriculture Development, EPARD, which is a wonderful organisation, very large youth involvement in EPARD. We have Raha Hakim Davar. Raha is an advisor to the Dean of Georgetown University in the area of climate, change and environment, and she has experience of building programs and education hubs, including in Qatar. So it'd be really great to hear from Raha. And then Glory, you're online. You can hear us okay, I think. Yeah, so it's great to have you online. And so Glory is one of the GRA Mitigate Plus Cliff Grads alumni, and Glory is based in Wageningen at the moment as doing a postdoc in Wageningen. So it's great to have you all here. So at that, I'm going to, I think, go first to Sebastian and ask Sebastian a question, which is really, in your experience with EPARD and indeed other youth networks, like what progress do you think is being made in including youth in decision-making processes towards sustainable development goals, particularly those relating to food systems and climate change? Your reflections, like, are we making progress? What more needs to be done? Who needs to do what?
Okay, thank you so much. So my name is Sebastian Pedraza. I am from Colombia, and I am, as you say, the chair of the steering committee and the coordinator of Latin America and the Caribbean of YPAR. YPAR is a global youth network that is empowered youth to transform food systems. And I think we have seen a very good progress. I would like to bring some cases, successful cases from Latin America and the Caribbean, for example, from Colombia and from the CGIAR region, but the way you will hear later in the next panel. And I think the government have the interest, and even some organizations, to bring those voices and the inputs of young people based on their experiences. But I think we could do it even better. So I think we can, the international organizations and also governments needs to include young people in a permanent body of decision making. So I think, for example, as COP. So I think yesterday I was in a very interesting panel with some guys from Latin America and some of the negotiators from some of the countries. And one of the demands that they reached was to have include young people on the delegations of the negotiation from the next COPs. So I think this is a very interesting example of how we can just include these voices and have this transition also. We need to work with the people that is already and the power in these decision-making bodies, but need to pass, also the floor to the young people to have these ideas, the innovation, and also, have this intergenerational exchange that is very, very important, especially in rural areas. So we as young farmers and young professionals, when we are in the field, we consider that the knowledge of our parents, the knowledge from our grandparents, indigenous communities are super powerful, but when you just mix these with the power of science, innovation, and the passion of young people, you can make a real difference. So I think this is something that we call for, to include more people in these permanent decision-making bodies.
Thanks very much, Sebastian, and that's a wonderful response. So I think what I'm going to do next is I'm going to move to Raha to hear Raha's perspective. So Raha, the question that we have for you, I guess, is like, so you've been working with Georgetown University in relation to environment, climate, and particularly around education hubs, and like, to what extent do you see that there's interest from the young people in these topics relative to other topics that they could find careers in future careers in essentially. So like, what kind of interest do you see amongst the young people in relation to these topics which are pressing for the future?
Great. Thank you for the question. I think first of all, for the younger generations, they were born into a world that is fully engulfed in the impacts of climate change. So the sense of awareness that younger generations have is incredible. And on top of that, the understanding of environmental justice, the global nature of our world, and again, one in which that they were born into, that's all they know, is something that's very powerful, and something, and in the sense of activism as well, is something that, in the education system, it's very important for us to understand that, embrace it, and to grow it, and to allow that space. And, in terms of a very practical sense, there are very few jobs of today and the future that are not going to have either a direct or an indirect connection to environment, climate, food security, water security, energy security, all of these things. So, for us in the education system to not be directly thinking about these things and incorporating it into our programs is an injustice, and in some ways, not to be dramatic about it, but it is very important for us to really take that seriously and to ensure that the next generation has the skills that they need, the hard and soft skills that they need to be successful and to be the change makers. And a couple of other thoughts. So if you're not familiar with Georgetown University, the main campus is in Washington, D.C., so it is an American university. But we actually have a satellite campus or a branch of the university that's been in Doha, Qatar for almost 20 years. And that school has really focused on what's called the School of Foreign Service, or educating in the policy and international affairs topics. And that's really, Georgetown University writ large is very much known in that topic as well. And so about 4 years ago, there was interest, and now we're actually doing this, to build an environment school. And as part of building, and it's called the Earth Commons Institute currently. As part of that, I'm working with the university to build environment programs in Doha, at our Georgetown University Qatar campus. So, many personal reasons why that is very important and timely, but in particular in the MENA region, I think there's so much opportunity for us to really educate the next leaders in understanding the intricacies when it comes to the relationship between water, food, energy nexus, and so many other things in the environment. And then, in particular, having people that are trained in the science and understand climate change, understand environment, but also that understand policies and policymaking process and international affairs is incredibly important and very powerful. And in particular for the region, I might just share some thoughts that were shared by Dr. Ismahan El-Awafi, who's the new executive director of CGIAR, thank you, on an earlier panel a couple of days ago. And she said, science, climate change, all of these things are incredibly important. But when you don't have peace, you can forget about these things. And that's something that we need to be really conscious of, that the geopolitics, in a lot of cases, are going to govern what we're able to do with education or with research, with science. They trump the other topics. So what we're really trying to do is actually blend those things. So bring the understanding of geopolitics, policy, international affairs together with the environment, science, climate change, and everything else, the environmental security topics together, so that we have people that are trained to withstand and have the solutions that are integrated and that we really need going into the future.
Thanks very much, Rahad, and thanks for all of the very valid points that you brought up about political leadership, and science cannot be disconnected anymore from the political realities in every country. So now I think it's a really good segue to take us over to Glory online. So the question for Glory that we've put together really is, it relates to the question that many of the challenges facing our food systems and our agricultural systems, they're essentially require trade-offs, and they may generate co-benefits as well, but they require kind of interdisciplinary and systems thinking. So what's been your experience, I guess, from coming through education systems and training systems of developing the interdisciplinary skill set that you need to be able to interact with different disciplines, but also to have impact. So your kind of reflections on that, and, you know, is the system good enough, the education systems, or does more need to be done?
Thank you, Charles. Very good question there. So, yeah, in my experience in the past years, the past decades, research institutes, universities are designed along monodisciplines, but increasingly we are beginning to see interdisciplinary research groups emerging and research hubs, research teams, clusters dealing with nexus, soil, water, energy, you know. So there's more awareness that we need to conduct research and also offer education for sustainability, considering interdisciplinarity and also transdisciplinarity. Yeah, and the cliff grass is a good example of that. From my experience with the cliff grass, as a cliff grass scholar, I visited the International Rice Research Institute in Vietnam. And for the cliff grass, that's a topic you apply for. And when you're offered the opportunity to go for that research, you're expected to work on that topic. But in addition to the research topic, I was to work on agricultural greenhouse gas emissions from rice field. I also, because of the network in IRI, I also got involved with other researchers and did another study on horizon scanning, you know, taking advantage of the network. So I think not only the research institutes or the universities or educational settings should be structured around interdisciplinarity, but more so, there should be much more exchange between the global south and developed countries, or just like in the cliff grads where PhD candidates can travel from one place where they're doing their PhD somewhere else where they're able to interact with other researchers. So I think such opportunities, we should have them more and more. There should be more funding for that. From my experience, this has really helped me to get more involved in other fields that ordinarily I wouldn't be involved in if I just remain in my PhD research group.
Thanks very much, Gloria. So I think we have time for maybe one question, which I'll pose to the general panel, and maybe one person can pick it up. So I was recently at the World Food Forum meeting in FAO, and there was a very strong youth component at that. And I was reflecting on the questions of representation and legitimacy to represent youth, and to what extent we have processes that ensure we have diversity and inclusion, that any youth who are marginalized due to gender, due to ethnicity, due to their income level, that they are included in these, like youth is not a homogenous category. Anybody want to pick that up in terms of processes or mechanisms?
So I can bring like a quick example. I think, yeah, we are here, but we are representing too much, you know, young leaders that are on the field and also in different places promoting rural development. So I think I can just go back 2-3 weeks ago when we have a very interesting event in Latin America. It was the first Latin American youth event focused on the transformation of food systems. And what we do is just try to identify, you know, all the key partners in the regions that are working with youth from the field, specifically those that, you know, that are hard, you know, to come here because they are not able to get a visa. They are not able probably to get, you know, they don't speak English as we are, because I think we are these lucky ones that have the opportunity to have these changes to talk. So I think this kind of partnership, when you put all people together, are the ones that, you know, can make their voice heard, you know, those when we can just bring all these. In this event, we have the opportunity to create an alliance, a coalition of rural youth and young professionals in Latin America. And it's a very interesting also example because we bring all the voices together of the youth, but also the partners around. I think in Latin America, when I come from, when I wrote, I think that in our education, always people teach us to compete each other, you know? But I think we need to go together and make our voice heard. I think this is the perfect example. And I think there are a lot of key partners here that are working on Latin America. So this is a very important moment to invite us to be part of this coalition and just make our voice heard in these policy spaces. I think when you get all these voices together, you can create a bigger impact and advocate for rural youth and sustainable development.
Thanks very much, Sebastian. So I think we have time for like 2 questions from our audience, and we'd like to get some questions from young people in our audience. So if anybody has a question, can they put their hand up? And so we've got this person here, so I think we'll go to yourself, and yeah, and this person here. Okay, so we have 2 questions. This lady first. And you can direct your question to any one of the panelists. I think that would be, if you can, yeah, if you want.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the very interesting event, and thank you to the panelists. I mean, everything that you said, I think there was a nice sort of complementarity that echoed a lot of things that I think young people always think about, especially those who are in academia. I mean, I'm a PhD student. I'm Lebanese also, so I'm very much interested in this whole exchange between Global South and Global North. And I think, Gloria, you mentioned something really interesting about the most important thing is always like the networks that we are exposed to and how important it is to bring young researchers together. And I think something that I would like to say is that in the Global South, we face challenges that are very different from the Global North. And I think what would be really interesting is to sort of have a space where like-minded researchers who know the context of their countries can be brought together to learn more about successful cases that have worked in specific countries. I recognize that it's also really important to go and learn also from the Global North, but I think South-to-South cooperation is very important, and I think if that could be a very essential part of the program, that would help a lot of researchers to come back to their own countries and change the context of their own countries. I mean, specifically when we're talking about shrinking civic spaces and all of the restrictions that activists are facing, whether it's censorship. I mean, here also we have some activists have faced some censorship. So I think the most important thing that activists and researchers would benefit from is this sort of scaling up of successful case studies that have worked in the Global South through connecting with other researchers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so I'm going to pass to this gentleman here. You have a, okay, and then this gentleman here. So okay, and then we wrap up. So if we can keep it, if you can keep these quite short, that would be good because
I just so my name is Vinay Nangia. I'm research program leader for soil water agronomy at ICARDA. ICARDA is the CGIAR center that is headquartered in the MENA countries. So we've been serving this part of the world for quite a long time. And I just want to share a couple of experiences. One is that we have an e-learning dryland academy. So we have lots of online courses for people to download and watch and learn. And second thing that we have been doing is short-term, long-term courses to have a next generation of leaders being developed in the region so that they speak the same terminology that is being used internationally. We have an Arab funded scholarship program where we have students from the region come to ICARDA to spend time doing their master's and PhD programs in a hybrid, in a sandwiched manner. So they get degree awarded by the university, but they do their research at ICARDA research stations. So it's been quite successful examples thus far. Sorry.
Thanks, Vinay. And so back to this man. If you could introduce yourself, and if your question is directed to any particular panelist, and that this will be the last question before we move on to the next session. Okay.
Thank you so much for this. It was very interesting. My name is, sorry, I lost my voice today. My name is Camille Mroue. I'm also from Lebanon. And my question is directed to Dr. Hakim Davar. And it's about climate skepticism amongst the university students. How do you deal with this? Because while I completely agree that this young generation is much more climate aware than previous generations, including mine, there still is, how I've noticed, a segment of the youth population that has remained resistant to the science on climate change and that refuses to engage with it and hence can be considered climate skeptic. So how do you engage with those at a university level?
So a couple of things. First, I wanted to reflect on what you said about the point of global South to global South exchange, or in general. You know, a lot of my work has been with satellite data and actually in kind of looking at Earth from space, and it's a wonderful view to have because you get rid of all the political boundaries and borders, and you really see the environment, you know, this planet for what it is. I think it's very important, and it's something that we're thinking about with our global hubs, not just having, for example, people from DC or people from elsewhere going to DC. Actually, we're really trying, there are enough programs that do that, but actually thinking of where can the students from Georgetown University, Qatar, go to, elsewhere. So, for example, Indonesia or to Greece, actually, where we have another emerging hub, or to places in West Africa, including Ghana. And so I think I definitely want to underline that's a very important part of the education system moving forward. The climate. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I mentioned, I'm a scientist. It's you teach the science, but you also teach the impacts, throughout the education system. So it's interesting to hear the skepticism around climate change. I don't think I've quite actually seen or experienced that as much. Universities are places to question, and there should be forums for discussion, and everyone's values and everyone's ideas should be valid. So I think, one thing that we try to do at Georgetown, and I think in other universities as well, is to really allow people to ask their questions. That is the time to do it. So, I would encourage whether it's students or faculty, professors, whomever, is to not call out the people that maybe think in a different way, or maybe they have some maybe the climate skeptics, as you called it, but to really open that dialogue, to give them the space to understand where are people coming from, what in their worldview has led to them to question these, the emergence of these science topics, and really, I think that is the time to do it. So I would say, not to get angry at one another or to call each other out, but to really enable the space to understand one another, and that is where the universities can be very useful.
Thanks very much, Maha, and thanks for that last question. So that brings us to the end of this particular panel discussion. I'd really like for everybody to put up their hands together for a round of applause for our panelists. And so it's been very enriching and informative, I think, for everybody. So we're going to move on to the next panel discussion, which will be led by Joachim Lozano, who's the CGIAR Latin America and Caribbean Regional Director. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I, without further ado, invite Dr. Joachim Lozano, who is the Regional Director for Latin America and the Caribbean at CGIAR, and please invite your speakers.
Thank you. I think we have been given a...
We do have an extra 5 minutes. So.
Super, thank you. Even though we have an extra 5 minutes, we still have a bit of a limited amount of time left to hear from this next block of panelists. So in order to hear from them, I will refrain from giving a longer speech now, but I would like to invite, first of all, the two panelists who are going to be joining us online. Okay, there we are. Can you hear us? Can you just say a wave or something to make sure that you're... Perfect. So we have Samantha Kirus, the Head of Strategy and Sustainability Impact from Gambuk. Welcome, Samantha. We're so happy to have you here. And we have also Mary Aina. She's another Cliff graduate, alumnus, and she's also, going to complement the previous examples and experiences from Cliff Grad's alumnus. And I would like to invite to the front Ricardo Montero. He's the Regional Technical Coordinator of the Executive Secretariat of Central America's Agricultural Council. So thank you, Ricardo, for being here in person. We heard from Sebastian a bit earlier that, you felt that you were the lucky ones to have been able to travel here with a visa and everything. But I think us are the ones who are lucky to have voices from the young people, in this kind of global fora. So thank you all for having made the effort to be here today. So without, further ado, we'd like to trigger this conversation with our next three panelists, and asking first our guests online. I will start with Mary. Mary, I would like to, just to, continue with the experience and, the lessons that we have learned from the Cliff Grads before. So how do you think initiatives like the Cliff Grads contribute to empowering young scientists from developing countries, regions, to very, very actively engage in policy discussions related to, of course, agricultural greenhouse gas emissions, and how can the experiences help influence policy making in the context of policy making in a sustainable future? So Mary, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Hi everyone, I am Mary Ngari, and I am actually originating from the Global South, Cameroon. And I have had the opportunity to be a Cliffs grad, and my duty station was Cali, Colombia, with the Alliance of Biodiversity International and CGIAR. Cliffs grad is an initiative that has a lot embedded in it. And I'll not talk more, if I have to talk about everything that Cliffs Grads as an initiative does as concerns to climate policy or building capacity and all that, it will be too much, but I have just 8 points. I'll vividly mention that, and first is capacity building. For example, my experience as a Cliffs grad, I was a PhD student then, gave me a different perspective. It equipped me with some new skills that made me to have a different perspective in understanding greenhouse gas estimations, especially in the food systems. This gave me the skills to be able to, make some valid contribution, evidence-based contributions when it comes to contributing to policy, where we have a manuscript already on greenhouse gas estimation methods that we've submitted. It's wonderful, and we'll be sharing that also. Secondly, the access to resources. Cliffs Grads as an initiative gives us that access to to resources like data, research facilities, and mentorship. This plays a very crucial part in the life of us young scientists to conduct meaningful research that will contribute or better inform policy. Furthermore, we have networking. It's such a wonderful initiative in creating network, especially for young scientists, where you have collaborations with already established researchers, policymakers, and organizations. For example, while I was doing my Cliffs grads, I had the opportunity to meet a lot of scientists that I only read on papers. I read their papers, and I had to meet them and have a one-on-one with them. That gave me more confidence in what I was doing, and also a different perspective in how I look at science. And also research exposure, that ability to build expertise and credibility. There are some expertise that I could not really know that, okay, I had this in me, but during this experience, I saw those expertise really coming out, which I've been applying now, and has contributed to a long-term, like it has a long-term contribution, because right now I am actually working with the Alliance in Cali, and I work with 2 teams, like the impact evaluation team and the low emission food systems sub-level. The aspect also of the Cliffs Grads initiative of interdisciplinary approach is wonderful. I had the opportunity to meet agronomists, environmental scientists, economists. I am an economist, yeah, but I also met economists of different, economics is kind of broad, of different specialties, shared knowledge, and also gained knowledge. And presently, I am involved with the there is an initiative also with the Alliance that is a national policy strategies that I am involved with. And we are currently doing policy coherence, land, food, and water in Latin America. That is wonderful because there is a different way that I see these policies now, and I'm able even to contribute like, okay, this policy, yeah, it's well developed, but maybe if we are adding this aspect, it will go a long run to capture this in a broader perspective. Thank you.
No, thank you, Mary, and thanks for highlighting how important it is for policymakers to listen to well-trained young scientists. So thanks for that. I'm gonna now get here to the room and bring Ricardo to the floor. And Ricardo, welcome again. And I would like to ask you if you could tell us how you consider this active participation of youth, can influence and now focus on the region of Latin America and the Caribbean, and specifically the agriculture sector, and in Central America, that is the focus of CICA. Thank you, Ricardo.
Yeah, thank you, Joaquin. Yeah, well, thank you for the invitation. I'm Ricardo from the Central American Agricultural Council. I'm the technical coordinator. The Central American Agricultural Council is made of the 8 ministries of agriculture. It's part of the Central American Central American Integration System, CICA. And what we do is regional policies, right? In this case, the Council of Ministers of Agriculture approved last year, in 2022, the Central American Strategy for Rural Youth. Before that, we only had a strategy for rural development, but we came to the account that we needed to do something else for rural youth. And that's how we started a process on consulting the youth about what they needed so that we can build a strategy for them and with them. And it was very interesting. In the region, we all together, the 8 countries are about 60 million people, and around 42% of them live in rural areas. So rural is important, of course. And of them, more or less 39% are youth. So again, rural youth makes sense. I mean, you have to work with rural youth if you want to develop the region. In that sense, most of the countries have ministries or institutions that are in charge of working with youth. But most of them work on urban areas. And then the ministries of agriculture, they usually work in rural areas, but they treat the youth as they were, older. And you have to work in a different way with youth in the rural areas. So we put both together to talk, and we realized that the ministries of youth didn't know how to work with rural youth, and the ministries of agriculture didn't know how to work with rural youth, So they came together, and we made different workshops, national workshops and regional workshops, and we have this new strategy that was built with the youth. And the very first component of this strategy is actually climate change. They wanted to have climate change as the very first component, the very first line of action of this strategy. So as you were saying before, this new generation is much more aware of climate change, and it's something that is easily, it's easy to see. And but they also have to work on the means of living and strengthening income, and of course, the third biggest line of action is the strengthening of the institutional framework. It is, we have said that policies that come from, top to the bottom, they don't usually work, but you cannot only work from bottom to top. You have to meet somewhere, Both have to meet somewhere. Doesn't have to be in the middle, necessarily, You still need policies that come from the government and of course, resources, but you need to hear the voices of the territories and, of course, the youth. And you have to meet somewhere, and it's different in each territory, it's different in each country, and that's what we are trying to do with this strategy in Central America. It was built with them, and it's being led by them. We have now national roundtables of youth, rural youth, and of course we have a regional roundtable where they meet. They talk about their expectations, they do exchange of experiences, and we are, also looking for finance and so on. And so this is the mechanism that we are doing. And what we are trying with this regional strategy is to have national strategies as well. So that's actually what we are now today. And yeah, that's more or less so how they are participating in the policy making in Central America.
Thank you so much, Ricardo. This is very enlightening to hear, hands-on experience from a coordination mechanism like SICA and CAC, working with the youth in the territories. Thank you for sharing that experience with us. And I think now is a perfect time to bring Samantha on, because now we have to listen to the perspectives from the private sector and how you think, Samantha, the private sector can contribute to enhancing young researchers' capacity in climate change and food systems transformation. But specifically ask you as well if you can tell us, is it just access to funds, or what else can contribute to to the access for the young people to be part of this agenda, and with the support of the private sector?
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you very much for the opportunity of being here today. My name is Samantha Keiruz. I'm the head of strategy and sustainability impact at Goombok, which is a social enterprise based out of Dubai, and I represent the MENA perspective here. I'm also heading an exciting.
These are experiments we have, and these are the association.
Sorry about that, Samantha. There was some interference. You just give us a second.
So thank you very much, President.
Sorry about that,
Okay.
Samantha.
No problem.
Could you just, resume now? Thank you.
Yeah, so I also had an exciting initiative. We've just called for applications. It's called the Regenerative Agriculture Venture Program. And this program is aimed at supporting researchers, upskilling them, driving a bridge between research institutes and academia and the private sector, upskilling them and capacity building in the much needed business skills to get these solutions out of the silos into on-the-ground applications. And as part of that, driving an awareness and a movement for how regenerative agriculture is linked, the link between agriculture, climate change, and the notion that we have to work with nature. In specific to the private sector, I think there are gaps to be addressed across all stakeholders and all sectors that play a role in supporting young researchers. Is it possible? Yeah. Our region, the Middle East, North Africa, sees a quarter of funding and resources going into research and development compared to the global North. So it's definitely an area that everybody needs to focus on and drive more support, funding, and resources to support these young researchers and young farmers in particular also. And I think for a long time, agriculture and food systems has been seen as a public sector. This is in the realm of the government and civil society as something a service that they need to provide. And there are gaps, and the recent groundbreaking COP28 mobilization of more than 2.5 billion with the support to date of 137 countries to support food climate agenda is definitely a step in the right direction in funding mobilization specifically. But there's an even bigger role that private sector can play. 63% of private sectors food-related companies mentioned that they support agriculture and regenerative agriculture practices in their sustainability and ESG reports. However, only 8% translate that into financial support on the ground and in place. And this is according to a recent FAIRR report. But as you mentioned, finance and funding isn't where it stops. There are many other gaps beyond funding to be addressed by the private sector. The private sector must start with genuine engagement with the youth and not just seeing them as a CSR or an internship or a mentorship program, but really engaging them truly in strategy and operations and decision-making, inviting them to the decision-making table in the capacity of qualified experts of the fields they're in, and as experts in the agriculture future the youth want us to co-create. We need to help develop the future talents of agriculture in the future. And I believe this is a serious gap to highlight. On behalf of the Middle East, North Africa region, the average population and the median age of the population here is just 25. And we look, in contrast, the average farmer age in the MENA region is 57 to 63 years old. So on average, 60 years old, almost on their way into retirement there, and with the youth average population at 25, just at the beginning of their career. So we see that there's a very flagrant gap, in 35-year-old gap, that we need to accelerate to fill as soon as possible, because it really begs to ask who is going to feed us in the future. And I think a way to address this is through the private sector. Innovation, excitement, commercial viability that leads to enhances in scalability, accessibility, productivity, really normally sits at the crux of the private sector. And they are best placed to show the youth that they can have a prosperous, fulfilling future in farming. The private sector has done this before. We've seen what the private sector over the last 20 years has done with mobilizing around entrepreneurs in building the SME sector. And I believe that young researchers need the same support as the ecosystem that has been built. I think it was in the 2000s where we really saw this catapult and rocket ship, if you want, of fueling entrepreneurship. And we are now seeing the benefits of that. And what that entails is a holistic stakeholder engagement that has mobilized to capacity build, yes, to invest, but also to provide a seedbed, incubation, acceleration platforms for these applications to come to life. I think it's no debate that we have great research. We have great youth research in agriculture and in climate change. What we don't have is a framework to bring those applications to life and give them the skills and the network and the means to do so. And we need to bridge the silos of research institutes and academia to applications on the ground by conduit of the private sector, investing time, effort, skills, and money in them. Instead of office space, where that's what they were offering for entrepreneurship, they would need to offer farmland to apply their research and develop their proof of concepts. And this is something we're hearing more and more from research and agri-startups in our region, is that they don't have readily access to farmland to develop their proof of concepts. And I feel like researchers and young researchers in particular are perhaps the unsung future heroes of agriculture and climate change solutions. They live and breathe the challenges. They have the data and the science to do so. And we just need to give them a helping hand to allow them to pitch, to bridge with the stakeholders that are going to mobilize, and to translate those ideations to relevant stakeholder languages. And this is precisely why at Gumbuk we mobilized in partnership with HSBC and the Saudi Awal Bank in Saudi Arabia for Middle East, North Africa and Turkey regional initiative to launch the Regenerative Agriculture Venture Program. And we feel that we need to see more research, science and data, nature-based solutions that are readily accessible to support the 60 to 80% small farmer holders. We see a lot being mobilized in high-tech, deep-tech, agri-tech, vertical farmings. And these are great innovations to have. They're going to help us in terms of food securities, but they're not necessarily what is going to help these small farm holders and family farm and youth attract them into farming as a career. And private investment shouldn't only be focused solely at the farm gates, but across the entire supply chain, including agri-fintech, carbon credits, agriculture insurance, because these are really gonna, especially carbon credits and agriculture insurance, need the private sector to come in and help drive revenue streams to farmers and bring in the youth and attract them to this viable commercial career choice. I think the true challenge is to balance the impact investment with the return on investment type approach with private sector. This is a topic in itself for another day, perhaps. But capacity building youth researchers and young farmers can only benefit all sectors, and it requires the private sector to step up, but all stakeholders to come together.
Thank you so much, Samantha, for given us this very comprehensive approach, also with these insights of what the private sector's role is in this chain of actors to promote the youth engagement, not beyond an internship, beyond a training program, but really having them be part of the decision-making tables. Thank you so much to the three panelists. I don't think we will have enough time to have questions from the audience. Elisa, do we have? Unfortunately not, but I think after having heard these wonderful 6 different perspectives, I think we have a pretty good idea that we cannot pursue a climate agenda without the young on board. So now, for our final closing remarks, I would like to invite our dear guest of honor to please close the event. Thank you so much again. Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Samantha. And thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much, everybody. Could we have a better round of applause for the panelists, both online and in person? And I would just like to quickly synthesize what has taken shape in the course of the last 45 hours or so. In talking about youth engagement in policy making, and to my pleasant surprise, we started with the science, because policy obviously has to be backed with evidence. And the panel brought together such a rich diversity, and I loved what Raha said, that you can question without calling out, and that is how we are able to progress. And the second panel also spoke about bridging the gap with academia through private sector. So, which then leads us to the question, show me the money. And Samantha spoke well about balancing impact investment with return on investments, because at the end of the day, the young people need money in their pockets. As we then train the current generation of youth on leveraging on the role of agriculture, on the role of technology, while at the same time inculcating the feedback and the evidence and the science gained from the academia sector, because we all can't do everything, right? The scientists are not the same ones to go to the field. The money makers or the financiers and the investors are not the ones to care how you do it. They just want their money. But when we have everybody come together in a forum like this at COP28, looking at not only Global South, but also hearing from the audience, how can we then work with researchers from the Global North as well, that then brings about this global perspective, while then again looking at local actions. So ladies and gentlemen, my name is Amanda Namai. I am Inspiration and Advocacy from Generation Africa, and I work with young agripreneurs looking at how we can leverage technology to build the capacity of young people, and we also provide a platform for them to advocate at stages such as COP, while at the same time, I'm also a member of the YUNGO, which is the Children and Youth Constituency of the UNFCCC. And it's been a pleasure to stand before you. Thank you so much to the organizers for even leading by example, bringing the youth to the table. We've had such a great intergenerational dialogue, and I believe that is the way we should move forward in order to achieve success. Youth cannot do it without you, and while you incorporate the innovation, strength, agility, and dynamism of the young people, I believe zero hunger is not only an agenda that is far-fetched, but it's a reality we can live in now. Thank you so much.